All right, everybody. Welcome to the stream this morning. Um, let's get everything live. There we go. All right. Thank you, Michael, for showing up. And stable events, one event feature renamed, a couple other things slipping my mind, but also reactive functions and RX signal method. So beta 21. Let's take a look really quick here. So if I do this, let's see, we want this one. Oh, come on. And then we want the target next on it. And it looks like, oh, there we go. There's NGRX signals, beta 21. Should we do it? So there's the NGRX toolkit. What version do I have of the NGRX toolkit? Let's pull that up. I don't know what's going on with my toolbox isn't showing up in the bottom this morning, and I'm not sure what's going on. So let's take a look here, and let's take a look at my package.json. And inside of here, what's my NGRX toolkit? NGRX toolkit. So I'm on version 20 of the NGRX toolkit. So let's take a look at that also. Going back here. That's interesting that I didn't pick up the Angular architects here. Because I got NGRX signals. Angular dev kit. Why can't I see this? It's up here. That's why. Dependencies. Like it should be picking up this Angular-architects. But I'm not picking that up for version 21. Oh, NGR. Oh, okay. That makes sense. Let's we're going to we're going to migrate to NGRX signals. So migrate at NGRX/signals at next. And so we're going to go onto the beta branch of NGRX signals. One thing to be aware of is with the new NGRX signals, NGRX has actually got a bunch of open issues that they've tagged as good starter issues. And they've been asking publicly for people who want to contribute. So if you're looking for a way to contribute to something in Angular, NGRX is a good way to go. especially if you guys use, NGRX signals, NGRX, what is it, component store, NGRX store, um, all of that stuff. If you guys want to start contributing to open source, they can definitely use your help. So it looks like we got a couple of things. So we're going to do the no frozen lock file, and then we're going to run these migrations. So while that's installing, I want to take a look at what changed. So here's our migrations.json. Rename with effects to with event handlers. Oh, that's a good one. That is a good rename. That's a really good rename. But I'm a big fan of NGRX Signal Store. So let's go ahead and run this migration. And once we get this migration run, we'll take a look, and so hopefully everything builds and runs just fine. There are a couple of things that we want to do, but I do want to take a look before we get started at something that came up in the pull request. Come on. This workspace is not up to date. It is up to date. It better be up to date. Very fascinating. So it couldn't find the migration to run. But that's okay. We don't need that migration because we aren't using any effects in our store right now. So let's see if we build. If we don't build, we'll just revert. But for whatever reason, it wasn't able to find the migration. So it built. So let's go take a look at our application. We'll refresh. Everything seems to be okay. So let's just make some changes here. That's working. I don't want your ads in the middle of what I'm trying to do. In fact, we'll disable that the next time you pop up for that. Here, we'll put you at a 2-star. So that all seems to be working. Let's go ahead and mark this as complete. So our sorting seems to be working okay. Some things I want to do today is get some add buttons in here, some delete buttons, convert these over to checkboxes that we can check and uncheck on the fly. Maybe we can get all that done today. I'm hoping we can. But it looks like Signal Store is working just fine on the beta for us. We'll see if we run into any issues. The other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to add a due date to this. And to add the due date, I want to put the task name and description one on top of the other. So let's start with that. That seems like an interesting thing to do. We can rename it to task, put task name and description one on top of another. The other thing I want to do is align our numbers. Yeah. Those all seem like good things to start with. Just small. So when you build software, and this could be me, but this is a strategy that works for me really well, and it's a strategy that I think can work for a lot of other people really well. So there's this mental thing, right, that affects me. And so like it affects me with a lot of things. So one example, not coding related, is I grew up in the Super Nintendo era. And during the Super Nintendo era, one of the really big game publishers that really became powerful, I guess a powerhouse during that time, was Square. And Square started releasing Final Fantasies in the US. So you had Final Fantasy II, which is actually Final Fantasy IV, and Final Fantasy III, which is actually Final Fantasy VI. Right? They skipped over 2 and 3, and then they skipped over 5 because they didn't think US audiences would want to play them, or they were too difficult. Who knows, right? But Final Fantasy II or Final Fantasy IV is one of my favorite games, and Final Fantasy III is another one, Final Fantasy VI, both in my top games. Final Fantasy VII came out on the PlayStation, so also very, very near and dear to my heart. But 4 and 6 are very, very... I enjoy those ones. I've played them I don't know how many times. But mentally, it's difficult for me to want to start like a Final Fantasy II play, because when I go into it, all my brain wants to do is like, oh yeah, and then you got to do this, and then you got to do this. Oh, and this is going to take a lot of time, and you got to be prepared for this, and you got to be right. And so my brain starts to work against me, and it can be frustrating at times. So I have to train myself, and this is how I build software, and I think it's a successful way to build software just in general. But I have to train myself to get those small wins. So in Final Fantasy IV, right, the thing you do in the very beginning is you kill a bunch of goblins, and then you go to the Mist Cave, and you go to the Mist Village, and then the story kicks off. And right, and so it's those small wins, right? Kill a bunch of goblins until you're a high enough level to make it through the Mist Cave, make it right. All of that stuff, right? Those small step-by-step things. It's the same thing with software, and for me personally, it's the same thing with a lot of things in life, but with software in particular, you want those small dopamine hits as you're working through building things. So take those small steps. If your small step is just getting this, hey, everything works on the page, that's a win. Take that win and make it better, right? It's the same thing with where we are in this software. This software has become a lot more complicated than it was in the beginning. We've got stores, we've got updaters, and we've got stuff like that. But the reality is, it's still not done, and it still has a bunch of things that we can iterate on, right? The iterative approach is a very, very powerful approach for me in particular, but I think it works really, really well, even at enterprise levels and things. Being able to take something and just get those small wins, right? So this table is obviously hideous for what we're trying to do, and it's not a good user experience. If a user wants to toggle one of these, they have to go in and toggle it and hit a save button. That's 3 clicks to change the done to not done status, right? Not an ideal situation. Better situation would be that, that there's just a checkbox here. So we're going to get that done. That's a small iteration we can make. Another small iteration is this takes up a lot of space. If we put one on top of the other and renamed it to task, then, right, it's still going to take up a lot of space because our table grows, but we can add in new columns without making things look terrible. We can also make this stuff look better. So that's the small win we're going to get here. But yeah, that's the approach that I take to everything, right? And I do a lot of reading of philosophy and psychology right now. And the reason for that is that I'm moving more into a management style position and less into an engineering focused IC individual contributor position. And so I'm looking at, what, like, sociology, philosophy, psychology, things like that, like what causes us to do things. And as part of my study, you come across famous sayings like, a journey begins with the first step, right? And so I think a lot of humans are predisposed to work the way I am, where our brains work against us. And we're predisposed to want to stay in that comfortable space where we are. But if we can convince ourselves, and this is the mental game I have to play with myself. If I can convince myself that first small step is not that big, then I take that step. And then if I take the next small step is not that big, then I take that step. But if I look at, the entire journey, right? Like, I've got to walk 1,000 miles. Man, that's tiring. But if I can convince myself, to walk to the end of the block, or, if I can convince myself to walk a mile, or, just do those small things. And then, after doing many small things, I can look back and be like, whoa, look how far we've come. So, that's my pep talk for the day. Don't spend so much time worrying about what it's going to take to get where you want to get. Don't spend so much time worrying about the tools that you don't have or the skills that you don't have. Take the steps that you can take today and then overcome those issues later. There's famous architectural advice out there that says, defer the decisions that you don't need to make today until you can't defer them anymore. Right? Defer them until the last possible minute is often the way it's said. But what is that? What's the point of that? It's not about procrastination. Although I am a professional procrastinator, the point of that advice of deferring decisions until they absolutely have to be made is that you've gathered a whole bunch more information at the point where you have to make that decision. If you try to front load all your decisions, you're not going to have all the information. You're going to burn yourself out. But if you get to the point where you need to make those decisions and then you make them, you're going to have way more skills, way more information, and you'll be able to make better decisions in the moment. And it's the same way. If you want to write software, you don't know how to write software. Great. do what you can do until you have to learn the skills that you need to learn, and then learn just the skills that you need to overcome the issue that you've got. And you'll find that in doing that, you're going to slowly gain more and more skills, and it's going to stick. Like, reading something almost never sticks for me, but if I do something that I need to solve a problem that I'm trying to solve, I may not solve it the best way at first, but I'm learning the skills that teach me how to solve that problem, and eventually I'll be able to solve that problem on my own. Uh, so let's clean up this table a bit. Let's add the add button. Let's change these over to check marks. Let's add delete buttons for our tasks, and the accompanying events with the add, the checkbox, and the delete. That's why I'm leaving those until after we redo the table a bit. We'll add the due date. And at that point, I honestly think this is done. There are other things we could look at, but I think we're done at that point with the software. Um, unless there's something else that we decide we want to do, or there's just something cool I want to try. But we're winding down for the end of the year. So starting December 22nd, probably December 21st, my streaming schedule might be a little bit sporadic. I want to make sure I'm still getting at least one stream per week. So if I can't hit a Sunday stream because of family or whatever, then we'll get a weekday stream in there. We might get some extra streams. One thing I am a little bit frustrated with is, for whatever reason, I'll kick off my multi-stream, and the YouTube stream will go down. And I don't have a way of restarting the YouTube stream without ending the entire stream for everybody on Twitch, on Twitter, and on YouTube, and then restarting the entire thing. When you do that, you lose viewers who are sitting there waiting for you to start. They're like, oh, the stream just stopped, right? Or who knows what. Humans are fickle creatures. So one of the things I may do during this break is look at, do I want to keep Streamlabs? Maybe not. What do I want to move to? So there might be some streams where I try out different multi-streaming services and see what they're like. I don't know. I'm not making a ton of money, and Streamlabs is fairly cheap for multi-streaming, but there might be better options out there. Better options that allow me to control chat better options. So we'll take a look at that also. A little bit behind the scenes there, but let's get started. Let's dive into some code. Let's fix this up. The other thing, it would be nice to extract a lot of this stuff out into a component, because it all sits into the to-do. So we'll do that also. But right here, I think what we want to do is I think we want to take this column out. We're going to remove the accessor key from here. Our header is going to go to just task. And at this point, we're not really getting good information here. And so if we go take a look at our column API. For column API, there's an ID. So the ID is not required, and the column header is defined, or there's an accessor key. So let's make sure we do have a header, and it is a string. And we actually don't even need a function here. We can just make our header that. We can also make our header that. And that's fine, and that is fine. So we don't need the extra function. It can just be a string. So we're not going to need an ID here. The accessor key, we're going to be grouping this column, and so that doesn't work. The accessor function. So the accessor function is used when extracting the values for the column for each row. So we're going to the child column defs to include in a group column. So I'm curious about the columns here. Let's try with our columns here. Columns. Oh, that's going to group it with a header across both of those. I don't think that's what we want. What I think we want is the successor function, which is going to give us the row and the index. We don't really need the index, but we do need the row. So we'll get an accessor function on this. So accessor function. And our function is going to take in the row, and we're going to return the name. Do I need to do that? Well, we'll go row.name, description row.description. So it was already suggesting that. So now our task column returns an object that has a name and a description on it. And we could even do this. We could even go name, comma, description here. Because we can pull that out. And now we can just go name, comma, description. So we can use a little destructuring to make this a little bit easier to read. So now we're pulling out the name and the description. So down here in the header, so this function that renders it becomes a little more difficult. Like if we go and we refresh this, we'll see that we've got an object here that we're rendering for the task, and we don't want that. So it might be like the header itself is fine, but the bigger issue is here where we've got the row, and we're rendering this cell, right? That reminds me. This reminds me we need to look at some stuff. But we're rendering this cell. this cell being rendered means that here let's take a look here. So if we take a look at the cell gives us the table, the row, the column. So I think we can get the accessor function out. We want this because when we're extracting the value, we want that, but for the cell, we can probably use, like if we take a look down here at the basic definition, they're using this info.getValue. And we can include HTML inline here. Which is potentially dangerous. So let's take a look at that column grouping here. With the column grouping, so it provides the columns. The columns comes from here. So we got this cell here. Get grouping value. First name and last name. Interesting. I don't know that that's what we want. What does this do? We refresh this, will it bring it up? No, oh, that's too bad. Because like if we add in this cell, and in this cell, if we go take a look again, in our basic example here, so we can pass in the info, and that will get us the cell info. So here we can pass in the task, and then we can return an HTML string. So this is a cell context. What else is here? Can we do row? No, that doesn't work. If we go take a look again at our column def API, our cell, oh, it's props. So we can destructure the row from the so there's get value. Because what I'm curious about is say we do a bold, and here that's not going to work because we need task.get value name, right? Is that the right? Yeah, it's get value. Property does not exist on type unknown. Let's see what happens here. It probably won't work. Yeah, it doesn't know what that is. However, we can inline our function here. And then we can return this, and we can say if and so, well, we can say const current task equals task.getValue, and then we can console.log current task, and current task is unknown, so we don't know what it is. And for right now, we're just going to hard code some values here. So this is task name, and this for right now will be description. Because what this is going to allow us to do is see what we're getting for our current task. So, right, it's ugly right now, but we can see that our current task is coming in as an object with a description and a name. So we can add some runtime type checking. In an accessor function or key, you define value, and you can get that value in a cell, as I remember. Yeah, that's what we're doing, I think, right here in the accessor value. We're returning this. We're returning this object, and it's giving us just the description. So one of the things we can do is we can add a function. Function is task. Is task description. And this takes in a value that's unknown, and it's going to return value is, and we can say task string, it's going to be name string description string. So now we've created a type guard. And let's see what the type guard here says. So we're going to change this from a triple equals to a double equals null. So if the value is an object and the value is not null-ish, by using a double equals, it's null-ish. By using a triple equals, we're specifically comparing it to null. We want it to be null-ish. And value has the property name and description has the property name, or value has the property description, then we are a task description, and I'm fine with that. Sometimes, you know, the way I might write this is instead of name in value, I might do object, or I might do value dot has own property name. And maybe we'll change this up. It doesn't like that. No prototype built in, so that's fine. So what it's saying is that prototypes can be overwritten, and so using this is not guaranteed to be true. Like I could override the prototype of this value object so that has own property always returns true, and then this doesn't work. So what it's saying is to use object.hasOwn. And so we'll do that instead. So we can say object.hasOwn, and then we pass in value, comma name. And this is a safer check. I don't tend to like name in. Some people might. I'm not a big fan of it, but maybe it's because I'm old school. Maybe it's because I worry too much. But now we can say that, hey, so the difference between in and has own is name could be inherited from a higher level object. And so in this case, it's not a big problem. But what I'm saying is that name has to be on value and it can't be inherited by saying object.hasOwn. So now we can go up here and apply our type guard. So we can say if not is task description task, then we will return an empty string. That's fine. Otherwise, we can return here current task name. Wait, what? Oh, we want current task. I was like, no, that should be narrowed. That should be fine. There we go. And current task dot description. And there's a problem with our code here. Actually, there isn't. So yeah, this should work. So there we go. We've got learn signal forms, learn Angular ARIA. And so we've grouped everything up like that. I don't know if I need the accessor function. We could probably pull out the accessor function. Let's pull this out. Right, so if we comment this, oops. So let's see if it still works without the accessor function. It doesn't. Current task is undefined. So to answer your question, Ole, yes, we do need the accessor function. That's what's accessing the data to give us the context. So once we put that back, then we do need both. One other thing I would like to do is it is typeset. Well, it is type safe. Which one is type safe? Because get value returns an unknown. So task is a context. What's on task? Let's see what we get with task. Console.log task. Because we may not need the accessor function. So task is a cell. Still has a value on it. That's a function. Because when we look at it, I don't think it can know what it is, because if we look at the cell context here, it doesn't have the context of the accessor function. So the accessor function allows us to narrow things down. The reason that the accessor like get value has to be an unknown is I could do something crazy up here. And so by making it an unknown, and I really like this practice in TypeScript, by making the value return from this unknown, it basically forces me to write a type guard, which means that I get runtime type checking here. If I don't write the type guard, I can use duck typing, which would basically be inlining this stuff. But by writing a type guard, I get better type control here. I see my type because of this CT. Yeah, right. And so, and here we could even go with, an italicized, no task found. And here we can go with class equals text dash, is there small? Yep. And text dash, I want it to be lighter. But I don't want it to be gray. I want it to be, so we've got info contact, text info, text left, text large, lime, neutral. Neutral might be what we want. So if we do a text neutral 500, that's not bad. And here we could also do the same. So can I do surround? Control Shift P, surround with Emmet. And here we want an I. We want an I dot text dash SM dot text dash neutral dash 500. Boom. I'm curious why it's not wrapping this line, because it could wrap it right here. And this will make our just a little bit easier to read, right? Because learn signal forms is really the task name. And then the description itself is just a little bit smaller and just a little bit lighter. And by doing that, we improve the, we've improved the overall experience of our form. One thing that's weird is now it really doesn't make sense to sort by task. So let's get that out of there. And there's a whole bunch of refactoring that I think I want to do on this column definition and table and stuff. But so if we go take a look at our column definition, maybe depth, accessor, column def, columns parents, header group, sizing, filtering, sorting. Here we go. So sorting can be defined that way. There's a sorting function. Enable sorting. We want enable sorting to be false for this one. So instead of having a sorting function, we're going to change this to be enable sorting false. That's going to lead to a little bit of confusion in our UI because now clicking here does nothing. So we don't want the sorting function to be applied if it can't be sorted. Like this entire table head right here. Can we do if header dot let's take a look at the header API. So header API has the ID, the index, the depth, the column, header group, subheaders, column span, row span, leaf headers, is placeholder, get header groups, get flat headers. That's not what we want. Does sorting add anything to it? There's a sorting function, enable sorting, sort undefined. Oh, that's nice. Sort undefined last is a good one. Get sorting function. Get can sort. That's what we want. So here, let's just see here. Let's say at if header dot get can sort. Does that not work? That does not work. Table API set sorting. No. Is it on the column header? What is on the header object? The column dot get can sort. Boom. There's that. So that can go inside of here. And again, we'll take a look at we'll take a look. Oops, I want that up here still. I think it's at else, right? There we go. So we're going to take that out. We're going to take that out. Actually, the entire class. We can just make this a table head. So now if it's, expected closing tag table head. Oh, that basically means this all has to live here and here. So we're going to need to take a look at doing this also. But yeah, now task is not sortable, but the ones that are sortable, you can click on and there's feedback. So that, oh, you think the stream is freezing? Oh no. Yeah, my internet is